Podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from the unapologetic perspective of the Hoosier Left. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I'm recording from Bloomington. As we close in on Indiana primary election day 2024, I turn to the top of the ticket. The United States Senate seat being vacated by Trump-sycophant and denim shirt aficionado, gubernatorial candidate Mike Braun, is up for election this November. Hoosier Republicans threw all their weight behind 3rd District Congressman Jim Banks, somehow an even more pathetic Trump-bootlicker than Braun, clearing the field for the insurrection-supporting, Russia-loving MAGA dickweasel. Indiana Democrats, on the other hand, have a contested primary. In one corner, former state representative and longtime lobbyist Marc Carmichael. In the other corner, psychologist Valerie McCray. I liked my last two-part episode so much I thought I'd do another, presenting each of the candidates before you head to the polls. First up, Dr. Valerie McCray. I will paraphrase from her website. Dr. Valerie McCray was born and raised in Indiana, nurtured in Indianapolis K-12 public schools, and is a graduate of Arsenal Tech High School. While navigating the challenges of being a single mother, she earned a BA, MA, and PhD from the University of Michigan. With 35 years in the psychology field, 25 years licensed, she has witnessed how U.S. policies profoundly affect the mental well-being of our people. She's worked directly with veterans struggling with PTSD, incarcerated individuals in desperate need of support and rehabilitation, youth struggling to overcome the effects of violence, and more. It's clear that mental health must be a national priority, and we cannot address our nation's challenges one mental health crisis at a time. As a mental health clinician, she will bring a unique perspective to Congress because she understands firsthand how policy impacts the lives of real people, not just statistics, but the human beings behind those numbers. Whether it's improving access to care, addressing root causes of trauma, or advocating for policies that support mental wellness, she will be a tireless advocate for the well-being of every American. Dr. McCray was incredibly generous with her time, so we get a chance to go deep. She and I will talk about the mental health lens through which she views politics, her influences, and thoughts on the Biden administration. I'll ask her to comment on Democratic senators who have disappointed and what she would do about the filibuster. We discuss women's reproductive rights, health care, housing, climate change, immigration, the economy, foreign policy, and why Jim Banks sucks. But first, this plea for your support. 2024 has proven to be a far more difficult year than many of us expected, and I was counting on a trying year. After my 19-year-old son passed away in January, the day-in, day-out grind of handyman work just didn't seem important anymore, and I doubled down on HoosLeft in an effort to shed more light on state and local politics, where Indiana's Republican supermajority and their financial benefactors enact policies that ensure more Hoosier parents know the grief of losing a child by allowing guns to flood our communities, bullying queer youth, and poisoning our environment, or simply running the next generation out of state with their draconian policies. I've received an outpouring of support. Our subscriber base has grown tremendously, and we're picking up paid subscribers all the time. I've been able to publish more frequently, learn new skills, and expand beyond audio into video podcasting. But the cushion has run out. My wife and I have exhausted our savings, so I've had to don the Carhartt once again, returning to work, repairing, remodeling, and renovating, working on this project whenever I can. I'd much rather devote my time to this and to you, but I can only give this project the attention it truly deserves with your help. I will continue to work to highlight Indiana's bad actors so we can replace them with more empathetic leadership, and also shine the spotlight on the activists, organizations, and elected officials who are doing the hard work to build a more just, equitable, and compassionate Indiana for the next generation of Hoosiers. And I'll take on Democrats, too, when they put their donors over their voters, when they talk out of both sides of their mouths, and when they fail to push back against GOP authoritarian extremism with the necessary urgency and tenacity. The party is a tool we can use to achieve our goals. It serves us. We do not serve it. I will go deep to provide information and analysis you won't get anywhere else in the Hoosier state. I'm not motivated by the dollars, but everything costs money. Web hosting, equipment, editing software, travel to meet with other activists and organizers, and most of all, time. I need your financial support with a paid subscription over at scottaaronrogers.substack.com. For $5 a month or $50 a year, you can help me push our state in a better direction and help me keep the lights on. And while the best way to help this project is a financial contribution, if you can't afford it at this time, you can still help. Subscribe at the free level over on Substack. Set your favorite podcast player to auto-download new episodes of the show. Rate and review the show on whatever platform you use. Follow me on social media at facebook.com/HoosLeft. That's HOOS left. I'm also now on Blue Sky at the same handle. Personally, I'm at ScottRog78, that's SCOTTROG78, on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter. And on Mastodon at ScottRog78 at Hoosier.social. Prefer a visual medium? I'm now posting full video episodes of the pod on YouTube and clips on TikTok. The handle on both of those is at HoosLeft. Please, subscribe. But most importantly, share our message. Forward the articles to friends, family, and colleagues. Don't just like, but share on social media. Nobody is coming to save us. We must be our own saviors. With your investment, a full-time Who's Left could look like new content every day, full coverage of the 2024 election cycle in Indiana and beyond, and zooming out to see how the networks acting in our state function nationally and even globally. And even though I'm here asking you for money, I do not plan on paywalling any content because, as Sarah Kendzior, whose stuff you should definitely read, by the way, says, it's not cool to paywall political content in a political crisis. I believe in open access to information, and your support helps make that knowledge freely available to all Hoosiers. But I desperately need your contributions in order to keep bringing you all the content you deserve. So please, before this interview, pause right now, go to scottaaronrogers.substack.com and subscribe at the paid level. To those who have contributed already, my sincere thanks, and to everybody, thanks for listening. The following conversation took place on April 1st, 2024, and has been lightly edited for length. Here's my interview with Dr. Valerie McCray. Dr. Valerie McCray, thank you so much for joining the Who's Left podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, well, thank you for having me. This is great.
I appreciate you being here. So, we've had a chance to chat a little bit before we started recording, and we had a chance to introduce ourselves a little bit, but why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners here?
All right. I'm Dr. Valerie McCray. I am a psychologist that's running for U.S. Senate in Indiana. Originally from Indianapolis, Indiana. I did get all my degrees, though, from University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. So there was a 12-year gap where I wasn't in Indiana. I was more in Michigan. But then I came back to Indiana about 22 years ago, 24 years ago now. So I was born and raised there in Indianapolis, and then I left, got these degrees, and I came back, and for 24 years I've been back in Indiana. Yeah, I'm a Hoosier through and through.
except on football Sundays, I imagine.
Well, yeah. I'm go blue on football Sundays, definitely.
Well, we won't hold it against you.
No, yeah, that's okay.
So,
We got this, yeah.
um, so you've never held political office before. Why is 2024 the year to do this?
I think 2024 is a perfect year to do it. We have a thing in both sides of the aisle, I think, where we keep recycling the same people over and over again. And I think the country, and especially Indiana, and I think they're ready for just new blood coming through, new people coming through. Just recycling the same people over and over again is not working. Being a psychologist, I'll be able to take different views. We've got enough attorneys in office. We have business people in office, but we don't have anyone who really understands the mental health and sort of the mental status or sort of the mental pulse of America in office. So I think that the fact that I haven't ran for office before, I mean, I've ran before. I just haven't run before, like I'm going to win this time. Let me say that. Let me put it out there. I haven't held the office before, but I have put a lot of effort into getting where I am right now, which is we're on the ballot. And now we just have to wait till May 7th to see what the results are.
Indeed, should be a exciting stretch run here these last several weeks. So,
yes,
you said you're a psychologist. You've been a licensed clinician for 25 years. You've been in the field for 35, and you've said you'll approach the Senate, quote, through a mental health lens, unquote. So, what does that mean, and how does your work in psychology prepare you to serve in government, besides the fact that they're all like malignant narcissists?
I didn't say that, but yes, a lot of the policies and things that we see, there are some narcissistic sides to some of the things that we do. How we practice capitalism, for example, has a little narcissism in there. Anyway, because it's more like centered around get, and not necessarily spread the wealth around. But when I say a mental health lens, for example, even when we look at items, serious things like gun control or reasonable gun ideas or gun control or however you want to say it, when I look at the age of the person trying to procure a firearm. I already know that between a certain age, young men are very vulnerable to mental illness. I mean, they're very, very vulnerable to bad ideas, period, during a certain age because their brain is not fully developed. But also mental illness is also going to play a role in that. And if it's going to show up, it's going to show up between the ages of 16 and 26 years old, something in that category. So we need to put extra precautions on allowing firearms in that age range anyway, not to mention other precautions we could take as well, as far as, even on the other end of the spectrum, we know that white males, for example, become very vulnerable to suicide, at that 55-year-old age mark. There are some things we could put in place, or some thoughts we could put in place based on a mental health lens in that way. But I also look at, housing and, when I'm seeing clients, yes, there's some mental distress walking in the door, but also walking in the door is their wages, their housing, drugs and issues that are happening in their family. There's more that comes through the door than just that mental health issue. There are issues in Washington that we can make better for people so that we're not so stressed out. A lot of the things that we're seeing is just a global stress or national stress level that we could do a lot about by the policies we enact in Washington, how we write policy.
Yeah.
So that lens,
Yeah.
yeah. And not to mention the lens of just seeing legislation and our legislators and sort of, there's some issues there. There's a few people that I think are pretty diagnosable. But other than that, just knowing that, to give that view of, anxiety levels are very up right now. We have not came back down from COVID with the depression and anxiety. We have not, gotten back to status quo. We're just sort of in this really weird stage of climbing out of what was a very traumatic period. And we haven't even come to grips with the full grips of that yet either, as far as what did that mean, what that meant. And it, of course, is different depending on where you're from, what area of the city you're from, of the state that you're from. Rural areas were hit less, but urban areas were hit very, very hard. So, for example, for me, we were going to funerals constantly during COVID, and they were virtual funerals, which were really, really weird. And, or they were so, how do you cut, social distanced that everything was just so weird. So we came out of a really, really bad crisis. We lost people in the interim. And then that feels a little odd considering that certain areas of Indiana never got hit at all. So they have no clue what other people went through. And just, I don't know, the mental health lens moving forward is going to become very, very important. When I first started this journey, it was about 5 or 6 years ago. And I remember thinking, we need someone. I remember getting into this because of mental health was my thing. But no one wanted to talk about mental health at the time. Everybody said, nobody wants to talk about that. You don't want to lead with that platform. You don't want to talk about that. And that's not my only platform, but I did want to make sure mental health was a priority or a conversation. It has changed now. And now mental health is a conversation that people are ready to have because people have just seen the brunt of it. They've seen a lot happen in their world as far as mental health wise. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the last 8 years, certainly, if you look at the Trump era, it is, it's an attack on your psychological being just every day, it seems like. But even going back before that, if you look at the last 40 years of trickle-down economics, Reaganism, illiberalism, it in addition to keeping us broke and always scrambling and the mental anguish that comes from that, right? It's also destroyed unions. There's not solidarity. We're, the responsibility. We don't do things collectively anymore. It's all on the individual. All the responsibility falls on, and the debt falls on individual people. And it's just where we're lonely. We're atomized. We don't see our power together. Does this track?
Yeah, it's I think you're right on, Johnny on the spot, as they say. I think that right now people are realizing they've been on a grind. This weekly, daily grind of trying to make their ends meet. At the end of the day, at the end of the week, there's nothing left. We're paying bills. And at the end of the month, there's nothing left. And then we're being blamed for not having these massive savings accounts or these share accounts or these portfolios. These wealth portfolios, but the reality for most people that are working, it's not meeting up with what the American dream was supposed to be about. It just feels like almost like we're working, like our lives don't matter so much. We're just on the grind for the billionaires to make more and more and more money, but we're on the grind and we don't have anything to show for it at the end of the day. So now we're having to, even Social Security, it keeps the age is being pushed further and further out so that you're really spent by the time you get to retirement age. You're just, there's nothing left. Your back hurts, this hurts, you're old, you're tired, there's nothing left for you to do. And you look back at that like, what are we doing here? We're stressing from week to week to week. And the overall global feeling is just what are we doing? This is not making sense anymore. So we got to fix that fast. We got to, yeah. You feel that too? I feel it. Oh my gosh. I feel it very strongly.
So, as a mental health professional running into space, you're kind of unique. I think you don't see a lot of psychologists in politics. So is there someone that you point to as like a hero or an influence that has maybe done this before, or if not, a clinician or whatever, or a mental health professional, just in general, who do you look up to in politics? Who have been your heroes and influences?
Oh, there's been a combination. I'm like a patchwork quilt of people that I look up to. There's, from the past, present, or future. From the past, gosh, Shirley Chisholm was the first one out there running for president. I thought she was amazing. Barbara Jordan was one that really, really held her own in court situations, and she stood up for what the American people were all about. There have been, Dianne Feinstein, I mean, was excellent. I love Jimmy Carter just because he's a pure soul. I loved his integrity. Of course, you gotta love Barack. I mean, he just brought charisma and he brought dignity to the White House. I think he did well with that. There's just so many people that I would pull from. I like Senator Warren. I like the way she lays out her policies and say, okay, this is how this works. This is how we're going to pay for it. This is how this can happen. I like the way that she sort of goes and just sort of explain, okay, we can afford Medicare for all or medical care for all because this is how we're going to pay for it. If we do this and do this and do this. I love that. So I pull from a lot of different people, but I think I'm unique all in myself as well. So it's just hard. It's just a patchwork quilt. So I take a lot of everybody, but nobody at the same time. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, you mentioned Elizabeth Warren, and I was going to ask about any current sitting senators that you'd like maybe model yourself after, or you see that they're doing stuff that
yes. Richard Durbin was great.
Yeah.
He, we have a lot of ideas that are the same. He's an older white dude, but it seems that he has a very updated idea about what should happen going forward, whether it's education, whether it's investing in our future. He's a pretty cool dude out of Illinois. There's a few more that are just great people. I think we can move forward. There's a lot of people there are people in office that carry a lot of integrity, and they mean what they say, and they say what they mean, and they support that. And that's what anybody who's like that, I don't care which side of the aisle you're from, you'll have my admiration if you're able to do that. So.
Okay. So stepping away from the Senate chamber a little bit, going down the other end of Pennsylvania, what is the Biden administration doing well, and what are they doing not so well right now?
Mm-hmm. The rescue plan, the infrastructure plans, you can see things being built and started all over the place. From the statistics that we're looking at, people are back to work, people working. There are unemployment is lower at any given point. Things are looking good in that way. I think, though, we need different metrics to figure out what's going on at the ground level, because people still don't have affordable housing. People are still making wages that are pretty low. It's not yet hitting that middle income to lower income that needs to be brought up in this process. When we started a lot of the infrastructure products or things that are being done or built, I mean, there's especially in Indiana, there's roads being fixed. There's all kind of things happening. You can see it happening. But I would like, whether it's African Americans or people from the lower end of the economic spectrum, we want them to be able to do more than just hold the signs and say stop and go. We want them to be included in a way that their lives actually improve during this process. That's what I would like to see. And so the metrics need to be a little bit different. People still can't afford groceries right now. So they're not seeing it. So that's what they're not do. It's just taking a while to get. The metrics have to be different. Are we doing well on the ground? And I'd say it's still kind of rough. What else? I don't always agree with Biden. I agree with him on most things. I think he's done a wonderful job. I will vote for him. But there's some things I disagree with as well. The handling of the whole Gaza, Palestinian crisis. We're on different views on that. We're losing a lot of global respect because we're not pushing back, to me, in the appropriate way, and lives are being lost in ways that are just horrific. So in that way, I disagree with Biden. But for the most part, what he's doing in other areas are just phenomenal. I think he's doing a good job in other areas.
Okay, and we'll come back to that. I have some questions about real Gaza as we get later on. But right now, I want to dip back into the Senate and then maybe look back several years. Actually, he just passed away recently, and that was former Connecticut Senator Joe Lieberman. Now, back in 2009, he essentially single-handedly killed the public option from the Affordable Care Act. Would you have supported a public option, or maybe even Medicare for all?
Yes, most definitely. I think we need a public option that would bridge that gap. I am really, really an advocate of a medical care system for everyone. It doesn't necessarily have to be Medicare for all. That does give us a nice template to jump off of, but there's places that can be improved as well. But in the interim, a public option, we're eating this elephant one bit at a time. The Affordable Care Act, oh gosh, catapulted us so far ahead with being able to accept people with pre-existing conditions. That was a huge, huge. People don't realize how huge that is, and to take that, any attempt to take that back or to do away with that would be, it's criminal to even think about going backwards in that way. A public option would again catapult us forward. But the end of this should be a medical care single payer system that can control the prices of medications, that can alleviate some of the stressors that doctors feel, because we're spending so much of our energy, so much of our income, so much of our staff is about billing and rebilling and things being denied and rebilling again. And not to mention the fact that we're allowing insurance companies to make medical decisions for us instead of the doctors making those decisions. I think we're past that. we've been way past the time to get rid of that. It's not like it's improving year after year. It's getting worse year after year after year. So it's not a good deal. We're not getting better care. Other countries are doing a better job of taking care of their citizens. And they're doing such a better job that what we could do, I mean, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just follow their plans for a change. I mean, Canada's been doing it right above us. Germany's been doing it. A lot of places have been doing it much better than us. And our infant mortality rates, our maternity mortality rates, all these things have gotten worse, not better. It's not like we are living longer and surviving better. We're not. So something's wrong.
Yeah. One of the drawbacks, I think, of American exceptionalism is that we refuse to look at other countries that are doing things well and borrow their ideas. And we have to, reinvent the wheel in a new, more profitable way every time.
Yes. Yeah. No, we're tired of it. And I think most Americans are sick of this. I think I'm pretty sure the polls showed that most Americans would welcome a single payer system. However, it just doesn't get to the table for some reason. But we're going to keep trying. I'm going to push that till the day I die, actually, to make sure everyone's covered. It's just something I'm not going to let go of. It's one of those things like, women's rights to choose what their bodies are doing, or what women's rights to control their own body. That's another one that's going to grab hold to, and not going to let it go until it's resolved back to, to something that makes sense, which is women need to have autonomy of their own body. We also need medical care. These are things that I'm not going to let go of until it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we talked a little bit about Affordable Care Act and how it improved things greatly. But there's still a lot of people sort of left out because the states where Republicans have refused to expand Medicaid to their citizens, right? Now, that was one of the things included in President Biden's Build Back Better plan originally, was to expand that Medicaid, to extend the child tax credit, paid family and medical leave, and pathway to citizenship for immigrants. Lots of good progressive stuff. And a couple current sitting senators, Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, like Lieberman before them, blocked progressive policies by valuing obscure Senate rules like the filibuster more than actual results for their constituents. Now, would you let the filibuster get in your way?
The filibuster itself is unconstitutional. It's not even our Constitution. How we got there, I don't know, but we definitely need to do away with it. Of course, that could backfire a little bit, because there are going to be times when other people might have some really bad ideas. And that's relative, right, to what side of the aisle you're on. And you won't have any way of stopping it, depending on, who has the majority rule at that point. But Kristen Sinema and that other and Manchin, I never felt like they were Democrats. It always felt like they were, I don't know. They didn't feel legit. And I hate to say that, and there's no way for me to prove that, but it just didn't seem like they were on the side of Democrats. The way they voted, it was really strange. And I'm glad that neither of them are running again. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, with him, I think we've always known, right? Kirsten Sinema, I think, was especially disappointing because she came into the Senate. She began her career as a green, almost. Like, she was over on the left, and until, hedge fund managers started showering her with gifts, right?
Yeah, that was sad. It seems that way. So yeah, it was disappointing to see. And it seems like we were about to pass bills and those two were blocking so much from going through at a time when we really needed both of their support to get things through. We would have a little bit different world right now if they hadn't have been voting, differently. It was really strange.
So, top issue on your website, and you mentioned this before, is reproductive freedom. And we talked about filibuster. So it's likely the only way to give women in this country control of their bodies again is to eliminate the filibuster in the Senate. Are you committed to doing whatever it takes?
Yes.
Yes.
Let me cut you off. Let me cut you off. Yes. Yes. That was the whole reversing Roe v. Wade, for lack of a better way of saying that, the Dobbs decision. It's catastrophic in a lot of ways. So we have to undo that. I think that giving women, I keep saying I think, no, I know, women have to have complete autonomy over their bodies, because what people don't realize, there's so much connected to them. There's power and control issues, there's career issues, there's money issues, there's domestic abuse issues. There's a lot of issues connected to women's ability to choose when, if, and how she gives birth. There's so much connected to it. We cannot just think about, oh, abortion's not abortion. So we have to think about giving women it's not just her body, but controlling her career, controlling her path, controlling her life trajectory, controlling who she chooses to be with. There's a lot. And it's not just a woman issue. Families need to be able to decide, what's going on in their families, because it's not just a woman's decision all the time. Sometimes it's a family decision. Sometimes it's a husband saying, baby, we can't afford this right now. We just got this one into school. We just got this one in school. So could be just an affordability issue, but people know what they can handle and what they can't. It's not left up to me to decide what someone else can handle in their life at any given time. Yeah.
So so we've talked about healthcare and moving on down the line on your platform page, on your website, you say, quote, affordable housing is a right and a necessity, unquote. And when you're in Congress, that you will focus on a way to ensure housing remains accessible and affordable for middle-class families. What policies should the government be putting in place to make more affordable housing available? Should we be reconsidering public housing like they do in Europe? Should we be outlawing corporate ownership of single-family homes? Imposing tax penalties on vacant properties? Other ideas? What you got? What's your big grand plan for housing?
I think let's start with the second one. Is the one that's sort of my pet peeve right now, because we have corporations and hedge funds buying up huge property or portfolios of property, and then they're owning not just, I'm not talking about your everyday person that might own 3 or 4 properties or even 10 properties, and they're taking care of those properties, and they're able to manage those properties for their tenants. I'm talking about these huge corporations that are buying up droves of housing. They go in, they bid on these houses. The average consumer cannot afford to bid for a house above and beyond what the house is worth. And they lock out your everyday buyer. So young people cannot afford to purchase a home. Not to mention the fact that they're turning a lot of these homes into rental properties and then controlling the rents in those areas as well. So rent now is just beginning to be astronomical. People are I have friends that have to go back to work. They were retired. And they're like, wait a minute, my retirement paycheck now will not work because my rent went up $300 more a month. So we're seeing the effects of that. when you have these big, huge corporations buying the housing, and it's beginning to be worse and worse and worse as far as, 1 in 7 houses now are owned by some corporation and not by the community, someone in your community. So you're looking at situations where there's no one there managing the home, where people are in and out constantly. People are constantly turning over. The eviction rates are higher. There's less care. There's less relationship. When you have less relationship, it's a problem anyway in your community. I think that needs to be de-incentivized at all costs. So tax differently, make it such that it hurts more to have all these houses that are sitting there. When you think about that, owning a home is a way to pass down wealth from one generation to the next. So we're locking out a whole generation of people from being able to have that privilege of paying into something year after year and actually being able to turn that into something you pass down to your child, to your children, so that they can have a little bit of stability during the next generation.
I mean, that's, yeah, right. That's not smoke-filled rooms. It's like, this is what capitalism gives you. The incentive structure is such that this is, the decisions that people are going to make. So, speaking of things capitalism gives us, climate change is an existential risk to the human species.
Yeah.
Even with the massive investments from the Inflation Reduction Act, we're still way behind schedule. What do we need to be doing about this crisis? Tick, tick, tick. The clock's ticking down on us, right?
There are some companies that are dedicated. There are some capital. Not all capitalism is the same. There's capitalism built on narcissism and greed, where the shareholders are considered more than the stakeholders. When actually there's ways to do capitalism. I love B corporations, for example. I don't know if you're familiar with that genre, that set. But they have as a philosophy, you take care of your workers, you take care of your vendors, and you take care of the environment, all within the context of actually still making a profit as well. So all those things are coming together. It's possible to make a profit and to have capitalism without it being a greed, sucking everything dry, messing with the environment, destroying everything in the meantime, getting into wars we don't need, just take. There are ways to do capitalism that make sense. And this just doesn't make sense the way we're doing it. But there are companies out there that are doing it a little bit different. And I have faith that we will invest more in those type of companies, invest more in the people that are doing more research, that are doing more towards making this economy better and environment better. We just have to invest where people are doing positive things and sort of disinvest from those things that aren't in our favor. That ties to something else. It ties to one of my other things on my platform is making sure that we get those big corporate dark money out of politics, right? Citizens United really did a disservice to us because now people are not looking at, we've got some politicians that aren't looking at our environment, not looking at the well-being of people, not looking at what the people want, but will push policies that are not environmentally safe for us because they're being paid to push through policies, to push through things that aren't safe, that aren't taking us in the direction we need to go. That, if we could get that resolved, we could move very, 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 very quickly towards getting not only the United States, but the world on the path of restoring our environment and making sure that we have clean air, clean water, and that we'll be able to have the earth still here I think the earth will still be here. We might not be on.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure that the earth will heal itself, but I don't know if we will be here to actually benefit. So we will have to get in gear. But I think one of the first steps is get the big corporations, the people that aren't for us, aren't for the environment, out of the pockets. Not out. Yeah, we need to get them out of politics. Just put it that. Let's get them out of politics.
Yeah, especially because, the biggest source of this dark money is always the fossil fuel industry, right? And
Right.
unless you can shut off that spigot, I mean, they're able to essentially pump money out of the ground,
Yeah.
right? And,
Right.
and there's no way you can outspend that. So we have to legislate that out of
Yeah.
existence.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
Our politicians should be for us, not for the
yes,
corporations.
the Republicans this year, for like, I don't know, as long as I can remember, this has kind of been going on since Newt Gingrich at least, but they're fomenting racism and xenophobia to make this year's election all about the U.S.-Mexico border again. What are your views on immigration reform, border security, pathway to citizenship, and addressing the status of undocumented immigrants? What should we be doing?
I think that that's one of those political footballs that people keep throwing around. I think it's just a tactic to get people upset. Oh, the immigrants are coming over the border. For the fact of the matter is, what are they doing? They're working. They're helping the community. They are taking a lot of risks to get here. And everyone knows that they're helping the economy. They're roofing. They're doing stuff. We're using them to do things to get the economy going. But yet still, we're talking out of both sides of our mouths. They're not bringing over the drugs. The people that are coming across the border aren't the ones bringing the drugs over. Most of the drugs are coming through legal ports. And most of the people arrested for, I think it's 80-something% of the people that are arrested for transporting drugs are American citizens, not immigrants coming over the border. I think when you get to the point where you're putting razor wires up and things like that to really physically harm people, I think that's pretty sick. And that's something that, similar to putting the kids in cages, that's something that we should not have. We don't need to go there. I think it's just ironic that it's a lack of history, for one thing. There's always been a flow of migrant workers coming up to work or working in the United States, and they're actually passing through cities called San Diego, San Francisco, Los Angeles. You see what I'm saying? This was their territory at one point anyway. You're just acting as if they don't belong. They're part of the landscape. They've always been part of the landscape. But we're using them as political pawns, which I have a big problem with. When you start using people as these political pawns, what you do is make an under society where people are afraid all the time, where people are worried about getting deported and all these things that they have to worry about. And when you have that, you set up those dynamics, what you're doing is setting them up to be exploited, to be paid less, to be trafficked, to be abused, to be relegated to something dangerous and ugly. And so I worry about that more than anything, about the rhetoric that turns them into these villains or these criminals that will keep them in a state of fear, working underground behind the scenes, when we should be documenting them. If we, make sure that process is smoother, make sure that they're able to go home when they want to go home and visit their family, whatever, because there's always been that flow. It's this conversation that's making it ugly when it wasn't ugly like this.
The people that complain the loudest about immigration, I think, need to keep in mind that they are a lot closer to being a desperate immigrant crossing borders looking for shelter themselves than they are
Yes,
to being the billionaire whose boot they're kissing.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And
That's, yeah,
we
I
have
believe.
we have the means, right? Like if it wasn't for wealth hoarding by the richest among us, we would have plenty for us and however many people we can let in.
Yes. And not to mention the fact that they've been so beneficial to the regrowth. I mean, after COVID, we were pretty wiped out. And if it wasn't for the migrant workers and the immigrants that are even some coming across the border, we would not be back into a position right now where we're pretty stabilized and we're moving forward. Um, they're intricate in our growth, and we need to commend them for that, and we need to accept that. And they're not taking jobs that would normally go to someone else. That's just not true. It's just not happening. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I say I don't know when I do know. That's just sort of like this this space filler that I need to quit saying, because I do know this just doesn't make sense.
It's all about vibes, right? If you can convince people that there's this invasion and get them feeling unsettled, that they need more security and a police state, that they'll vote for that. But that's not what
Yeah, that's where the
it's
psychology comes in. Yeah,
mhm.
when you keep people afraid, they are operating from a different part of their brain. When they're afraid and upset all the time, when you keep them afraid, they're operating from a more primitive part of their brain, which is, I need to protect myself at all costs. When that is really not the reality of things. So when you keep people upset, you can get by with a lot. And I think that's sort of the intention sometimes, is just to keep people up in arms. I mean, the people that are really pushing back on diversity, uh, equity, and inclusion, for example, they don't care about diversity, equity, and inclusion. They just want to keep people upset. They don't care about immigration. They just want to keep people upset. They don't care about half the stuff that they're making a big deal of. CRT. They don't care about that stuff. They just want to keep people upset. They want to keep people up in arms, like they don't even care about women's rights or abortion. Those people that are causing all the havoc don't care about any of that. It's more about keeping everyone else at odds with each other and upset so they can do what they want to do. It's look over here while we take from over here.
Yep. It's totally out of whack. And
Yeah.
well, so you sort of led into where I want to go next. So on paper, the economy is doing well, right? It's doing great, but better than about any other country in the world coming out of COVID. Certainly better than other like rich industrialized peer nations. Our inflation's slower, our job growth is better, but people are not feeling it. So
They're not feeling
what's the disconnect? And what do we do? How do we fix the economy so that people actually feel that improvement, in their pocketbook?
I think we're going to look at, just like I said, other metrics. How content are you? How happy are you? How stress-free are you? How are these things adding up? There's a lot of things that we need to measure besides just the Dow or the or the stock market, or how much billions of dollars are being spent on this, or how many billions of dollars are being thrown into this bill or that bill or this infrastructure, or how are people living day to day. We're not functioning from a standpoint of the pursuit of happiness. We've lost that. It's the pursuit of happiness for the very rich and nothing for anyone else. It's just definitely not the pursuit of happiness for people that are middle income and below. It's just not there. We need different metrics. What's our happiness scale here? What is our contentment scale? What is our our stress levels and measure something else, besides the Dow or the, yeah.
Yeah. The stock market is a metric, but it is not the economy, right?
No. And we need to stop making people feel bad for not being able to keep up in this particular environment, because it's not made for you to keep up. And we have people blaming themselves for a situation that they add up how much it costs to live. They're not making it. It's just the numbers aren't adding up. And I think it's the hypocrisy of pretending like everyone is. Think about something. Minimum wage has not been raised since 2009.
Yeah. What? It's 15 years now.
The cost of education has went up 800%. So people have these huge college bills, and their wages have not increased, but maybe doubled, whereas everything is quadrupled and, 800%. I don't know what that is money-wise, but all I know is that I could pay for college, maybe $1,500 a semester or something back when I went to school. Now it's $40,000 or $50,000 a year. Who can afford that? They're not making that income to even pay for that. So student loans are just crazy. People need relief from that. We need liberation from student loans. We need liberation from a lot of different things, from these low wages, from these price gouging situations. We need liberation from a lot of different places. I think that where my candidacy comes in play is that I also work every day. And as a single person, I also get into those situations where it's like, oh, this is not going to tie together very well. My ends don't always meet. And that's fortunate and unfortunate. Fortunate in that I know when I go to Congress what to attack, what to fix. And I think that when people are so far ahead of the game, they're in that tax bracket or that income level, they lose sight of how difficult it is to make ends meet when you're making less than $80,000 a year. Let's just put that figure on you, because it's approximately about that. $80,000 gives you that breathing room. You could breathe in between paychecks. I've also had those periods of time where I couldn't afford health care. I go years sometimes without affording health care. That's, oh shoot, this will eat up $800 a month.
Yeah.
$600 a month. So I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like for no other reason other than COVID or whatever, or something switches in the economy, and all of a sudden you're dealing with a lower credit rate. And what happens when that happens? Everything goes up. It is so expensive to be poor in the United States. That's what we've got to get a handle. We've got to quit making it so impossible for people that are struggling to get out of struggling. It's like we kick people when they're down. It's really interesting. It's like, why did my insurance go up when I've never had an accident? I've never had a claim, but it goes up because of a credit score that had something to do with COVID, that had nothing to do with me. It only had something to do with me because I didn't get a PPP loan or whatever. I didn't get bailed out. I didn't bail myself out of this crisis. And I'm just speaking in my terms, but this is what the United States is dealing with. I'm just an example of that. And I try to remember those things so that when I go enact policies, it will be based on real life issues that I wouldn't have known about if I didn't struggle sometimes myself. So I really am grateful for the time that I have struggled, because I understand what that feels like. I understand what it feels like to have a grocery cart full of things and you're like, I need to put something back. I understand what all those things mean. So I don't want to forget that. I don't care how much money I make or what happens in the future. I don't want to forget what other people are going through, so that the policies I stand by will help everybody, especially those people that are struggling to get ahead. We can do better, so much better. I'm looking forward to being able to go to Washington to actually put some things in place, help put some things in place. Yeah.
Yeah, there are definitely not enough people in that body that have known struggle, for sure. Completely out of question.
Right. Yes.
Some people
And,
that go ahead.
people talk about term limits. I think the main thing, I don't care whether you have term limits or not, but I think that term limits, I think that if you're going to put policy together, you shouldn't stay in office so long that you don't have to come home and deal with those policies that you put together. You should be shielded from that. So whatever policies you put there in place, you should have to live with those policies. It's just, but if you just hide out in Washington for 50 years, how will you know what works and what doesn't?
Yeah.
So,
we briefly touched on it earlier, and I want to make sure we talk about it before we get going. But so the United States has supported Ukraine with weapons and money in its war to fight off the Russian invasion. We have also supported Israel with weapons and money in their ongoing offensive in Gaza. I view these conflicts entirely differently. How do you see these two theaters of war, and what should we be doing in each one?
if we're going to, there's two lenses I want to put on this. The first lens is mental health wise, because I do PTSD evaluations for veterans across 5 or 6 different wars, and I listen to the war stories. I already know that the Israeli soldiers, they're going to suffer a lot mental health wise, just as much as the Palestinians are going to suffer mental health wise. I mean, they've been traumatized, but actually participating in the trauma, I don't care whether it's from an aggressor standpoint or a victim standpoint, whichever one, there's going to be a lot of mental health suffering. The people that will benefit from this are the people with money that can go buy up all the properties and live well and forget that this all existed in the get-go, right? But the people that are in the conflict, they're not going to be able to enjoy any of that they've set up. Now, I also look at it from the standpoint of integrity. If we're going to make the argument that we cannot allow Russia to invade or take over Ukraine because those people deserve to be a sovereign nation and they don't deserve to be taken over, and we can't be on the other side of the argument when it comes to Palestine and Palestinians and the Israelis. I think we're not consistent. It's hypocrisy. We're not consistent in that argument at all. And the world is looking at us, and the world is saying, what are you doing? These people are real people that are dying by droves. I think we're on the wrong side of right on this. And it feels horrible watching it. It feels horrible knowing it's going on. It gives you a certain sense of hopelessness that despite everything we know about this whole Israeli Palestinian crisis, despite everything we know, we're still making the same decision. We're still sending money, knowing that the goal seems to be to erase these people off the face of the earth or erase them off of Palestine. If that's your goal, then why don't you just say it? Say, this is our goal. Our goal is to have all of this property. But to go back and forth and pretend it's something else, it's a religious thing, it's this thing. The fact of the matter is, these are people. And I cannot love the Jewish people any more than I can love the Palestinian people, and back and forth. To me, people are people, and no one deserves to feel unsafe. That includes the Jewish people. They need to have some place where they feel safe. The Palestinians need to feel safe as well. And if we can go back to a two-state solution at this point, I'm not sure if it's possible, but it's all we've got to hope for right now. I think both sides deserve that. And I think a lot of the Jewish people agree with that. It's just somehow the leadership there is not listening, and they're plowing through this thing. I don't think it's going to have a positive end, because globally we are looking, the world is looking at us and they're not liking what there's, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, understandably. So I do want to talk about your potential general election opponent here for a second, because this is a guy who's on the wrong side of both of those conflicts, among many other issues. So in this interview, you've talked about Eurovision. Contrast that with your potential opponent, Jim Banks, and tell the people why he is such a dangerous individual.
You know, Jim Banks just feels to me like he's just trying to throw anything out there against anything. He just feels like a MAGA puppet to me. And that everything he does is just for the attention, or to say, I'm on this side. I'm part of that whole Trump thing. A lot of things he's saying or doing is just totally ridiculous. I think that's going to backfire. I don't even know who the real Jim Banks is. He seems to be following a script, just like a lot of them are in a lot of the GOP is they feel like they're following a script. I'm not so worried about Jim Banks. I think I can knock him out of it's a no-brainer for me. I can beat Jim Banks. It's not even like a thought. And he's just a temporary guy. He's not based on any type of integrity. It's just him trying to climb up the ranks. He's a professional politician. He's going to say or do what it takes to get seen or make some noise or be against anything that makes sense at this point. We call that grandstanding. He does a lot of grandstanding, but I'm not that concerned about Jim Banks for some reason. It's like, let me just knock him out of the water. I don't know why I'm so unconcerned about him, but I really feel confident that I'm going to beat him in. So he's going to be a has-been pretty soon.
Yeah, well, you talked about people who, stay in Washington, for too long, and they're out of touch, and they don't, know what it's like to struggle. He doesn't even live here.
Where does he live? I don't know where he lives. Where
does he say he's from, or where does he actually live? Because he lives in Virginia. That's home. That's where he sends his children to school. But Indiana's 3rd district is home, right?
Wow. Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I just haven't. Just like I said, I'm sure that my group of people, there are people on my campaign that love to look into all that stuff. They love digging for dirt. Of course, on every campaign, people call me all the time. I just have been unbothered by that. I've just been wanting to focus on what I'm going to do. What can I fix? What can I do? Jim Banks is just not even, he's not on my radar. And I know people think he's just not on my radar. My opponent for the primary, I know he's really focused on Jim Banks. I know he really feels like Jim Banks is the person that he needs to concentrate on. For me, it's like Jim Banks is a nobody that I should even worry about right now, because I can beat Jim Banks. So we got this. We got this. Jim Banks is going to be a has-been soon enough. So not a bit concerned about him.
I like that confidence. So take us home here, Dr. McCray. Give us the big pitch. Why are you the best candidate for the job? And where can our listeners find out more about you and your campaign? How can they donate, volunteer, etc.?
All of that. May 7th everyone needs to know, first and foremost, that they need to vote in the primary. I need to get past this primary election so that I can run against Jim Banks and knock him out of the water. What makes me valuable to this campaign is that I'm not the typical politician. I come at this at a total different angle, and the time is right now. I'm the best candidate for right now. I'm not saying that other candidates don't work, but for right now, a female, Black female, it doesn't matter, but I'm qualified. I have a PhD, top degree from one of the best universities in the world. So we can't even argue that she's not smart enough. So I'm smart enough. I'm dedicated enough. And not only that, I've been in the trenches with the people that I want to serve so that I'm also connected. And I also am going with a sense of urgency as far as how to get these things fixed. We can't keep waiting. Let's get these things fixed and let's get these things done now. The time for change is now. The thing is that I know that once I get there, and even before that, I'm going to do a bang-up job. We're going to get closer, if not get this done with Medicare. We're going to get the job situation. We're going to support the unions. And more than that, I think one of the most important things that we did not talk about, that I want to talk about this now, is I want to make Indiana the education hub. I want us to be excellent in our education goals, to make it such that all the other states look to us and say, you know what, they've got it going on in Indiana. I just need, we've got legislators down here. I just need them to catapult me up to the top, and I'm going to throw some ropes down to make sure we pull our people up, to pull our students up, to make sure that they are going into the next generation with STEM and everything that they need to be. You know, our next generation is just so important. So we want to make sure we get that handled and be excellent in everything we do in Indiana. We can do that here. We've got the foundation, we've got the drive, we've got the people, we've got the landscape. We just need the right leadership. And I think I know I'm that person for 2024 and going forward. I'm Dr. Valerie McCray. You can reach me at ValerieMcCray.org, ValerieMcCray.com. Any of that. You type in Dr. Valerie. However you get it, you can get to me. We need donations, of course, and we definitely need more volunteers. We need people to work the polls. We need people to canvass. We need so much. This is a big endeavor, and we need more hands. We definitely need more hands. Definitely need more donations. We're going to make it regardless, but it would be much easier with everyone if we come together and we work as a team. They said it earlier today, when Democrats vote, we win. Let's win this. Let's turn this blue. Not just a wave, a blue wave, make it a blue tidal wave. Let's make sure we wash all the junk out the shore and make sure that we have what we need moving forward. Again, I'm Dr. Valerie McCray. I'm that psychologist running for U.S. Senate, and I really want your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Valerie McCray. Appreciate joining the HoosLeft podcast.
Thank you.
Once again, that was Dr. Valerie McCray, psychologist and candidate for United States Senate. Because she and I went long, I will keep my post-show notes extremely brief. I also spoke with Marc Carmichael, and we'll be back soon with that interview and my thoughts on this race before we head to the polls. But for now, thank you for listening. Big thanks to my guest today, Dr. Valerie McCray. Find her at ValerieMcCray.org. As for me, you can find me on Facebook, Blue Sky, YouTube, and TikTok at HoosLeft, and on most other social media sites at ScottRodge78. If you want to reach me, send me a DM on the socials or email me at ScottRodge78@gmail.com. If you haven't yet done so, when you're finished here, please go to scottaaronrogers.substack.com and subscribe at the paid level. Help me keep this project going. Until next time, this has been the Who's Left podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.